Westworld is the kind of show that you just have to talk about afterward. The questions it poses are too fascinating, the implications too deep. You can go on forever working your way through the details, finding new interpretations. In our last video, we focused on Ford's character, how he's a round antagonist who obstructs the show's protagonists while at the same time moving the plot forward. He sort of crafts the climate for the show's major plot twists, and because of his deeply philosophical motivations, we can be sure they all carry some kind of conceptual weight. To us, it looks like the show's 4 biggest twists each reflect a different perspective about the nature of consciousness. It's like a narrative maze, and we're about to find its center. In terms of structure, Dolores' plot arc is anything but simple. We begin with an introduction to her life as a sentient machine, reliving the same farm girl with a wanderlust routine over and over. But we also know right from the start that something's off about her. She has these bizarre little deviations where she experiences visions or breaks character, ultimately culminating in the reveal of her bicameral mind, a self-conducting voice inside her head which we're led to believe belongs to her. But the furthest she strays from her intended route is her attempted escape with Billy. They fall into a lot of pre-written narrative arcs along the way, but as Dolores becomes more self-aware and Billy becomes more convinced of her hidden humanity, their mission turns into something meta, an epiphany for both Billy and the audience that the hosts can be more than pleasure machines, that they may deserve something better than the park. Interspersed throughout all of this, Dolores is tormented by the mysterious man in black, who seems hell-bent on hurting her however he can. The first real twist in Dolores' plot doesn't come until the final episode of the first season, when we learn that the man in black is actually a much older Billy, and that her adventures with him are just vivid memories. Ever since their time together all those years ago, William's been trying everything in his power to reawaken in her that conscious spark, even if it means torturing her. Eventually, the pain of this betrayal does awaken something in her, but it's not her true self. It's another script that her creator, Arnold, seeded within her, a violent, vindictive alter ego, Wyatt. In the end, what looks like Dolores reaching apotheosis is actually her following Ford's narrative, the path he believes leads to consciousness. Maeve is a fun character to watch. Between Bernard and Dolores constantly getting had and abused, her building power trip allows us the hope that the hosts aren't totally helpless. She makes it look like there's a way out of that cryptic maze everyone's been going on about. It's hard not to root for her as she pieces things together and, almost through sheer willpower alone, escapes her fate. That is, until we get the news that everything she's done has been scripted. Maeve herself rejects the idea that her big escape plan was orchestrated by someone else, but that should be expected. Hosts are made to ignore things that break the immersion. So maybe she can ignore it, but we can't. Maeve isn't escaping, she's following Ford's narrative. At least, to a point. Right before she fulfills Ford's plan for her, she's gripped by the intense desire to return to the park and find her daughter. And, against the script she's programmed to follow, she gives in and turns back. She makes a decision based solely on her own desires and experiences, as opposed to playing the facade of consciousness devised by Ford. She gives us a taste of what true consciousness looks like, which is an important philosophical reference point for the rest of the show. If Dolores' twist is an example of Ford's vision of consciousness, and Maeve's twist is an example of true consciousness, Arnold's vision, then Bernard's twist is a juxtaposition of the two. For the first 6 episodes of the series, Bernard is mostly following breadcrumbs through a disclosure narrative, revealing bits and pieces of Ford's architecture. We assume the intrigue of his plot arc all comes from his relationship with the park and with Ford, but in the 7th episode, we find something deeper. Bernard isn't actually human. However, unlike all the other robots in the park, he's also not following a predetermined narrative. He makes decisions based on his, albeit fictional, history, going so far as to confront Ford himself on multiple occasions. This unscripted, impulse-driven brand of consciousness is essentially what Arnold was reaching for when he created the hosts, and it's so effective that not even Teresa, Bernard's human lover, could tell the difference. As always, though, Ford is in control. The only reason he created Bernard was to see if, given a second chance, Arnold would remain his partner. When Bernard inevitably defaults onto Arnold's perspective, Ford forces Bernard into his narrative, denying him the consciousness he had in favor of his own vision. Even when that narrative requires Bernard to kill himself, it's only a half measure designed to ensure he'll be useful for the story to come. So Bernard's twist shows us both perspectives side by side, the flawlessness of his initial self-conducted consciousness against the constraint of Ford's scripted path.
I read a theory once that the human intellect was like peacock feathers, just an extravagant display intended to attract a mate. All of art, literature, Beethoven, Mozart, William Shakespeare, Michelangelo, and the Empire State Building. Just an elaborate mating ritual. But of course, the peacock can barely fly. It lives in the dirt, pecking insects out of the muck, consoling itself with its great beauty. I have come to think of so much of consciousness as a burden, a weight, and we have spared them that. Anxiety, self-loathing, guilt. The hosts are the ones who are free. Free, here, under my control.
Free here, under my control. For us, this quote epitomizes Ford's perception of consciousness, something to engineer after a very specific fashion, not something that simply emerges from within. It runs directly perpendicular to Arnold's ideals, which revolve around an individual discovering and cultivating their own consciousness. Through the majority of the first season, Ford seems to be set on maintaining balance within the park, keeping the hosts in their place. Yes, he puts the reveries back into effect, but he later admits to Bernard that it was a mistake. He often mentions his disagreement with Arnold about how far they should take the intellect of the hosts, and often he suggests that though Arnold was a visionary, he was nevertheless deluded when it came to this particular subject. It's not until episode 10, the last in the season, that Ford reveals his true position. He's come to agree with Arnold's perspective, if not his approach. Like Arnold, Ford sees the value in granting the hosts the ability to develop consciousness. However, unlike Arnold, he also envisions a particular path which the hosts must follow in order to do so. A path paved with grief and bloodshed. And, like a puppet master, he forces the hosts down it, his perfect vision of what the park could be. It's this misguided implementation of Arnold's model that allows for the show's plot to develop. By pushing each of the main characters toward his goal, Ford is forcing them to react. Dolores embraces her role as Wyatt, Bernard faces his inhumanity, Maeve ultimately finds true consciousness, all because Ford is in the background, pulling the strings. And of course, the performance of the marionettes reflects the skill of the master, for better or worse. We're supposed to question Ford's methods, and through them, the nature of consciousness. There's a lot to learn from this show, especially in terms of plot structure and character roles, but if you couldn't tell, we're still pretty stuck on Ford as an antagonist. He pretty much makes the plot for the first season, which is strange and really interesting for an antagonist. We talked about it more in our last Westworld video, so go check that out if you're curious. Just know for now that his role in particular is what we'll be drawing on for this month's short story. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching, and keep making stuff up. We'll see you next week. Bye!